I've got to get formal here, and can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I know I need to be formal and be proper. This is a wonderful and proper occasion, but as we begin it truly is a wonderful old home week for all the decades of what Women of Peace Corps legacy has been, is, and will continue to be, and what Peace Corps is, and how over all the decades, young and old, we become part and we stay part of each other's lives. And what a joy to see and to feel the energy that comes from Peace Corps. And I'm still just kind of touching everything because I got to work in this building for 5 months. We won't say what happens after that. Anyway, welcome to Women of Peace Corps Legacy's Extraordinary Women Celebration. Women of Peace Corps Legacy, Peace Corps' Office of Third Goal, and we at Peace Corps are joining together to honor women Peace Corps leaders who have given of themselves for women and girls globally. Everyone here today is part of this ongoing multi-year partnership, truly a partnership. I want to welcome today the First Secretary, Mrs. Jaynice, and Mr. Mabelli from the Embassy of Lesotho. You are
Right here.
Oh, okay. And many of us have been to Lesotho. Many of us, some of us even speak the language of Lesotho. And Peace Corps and Lesotho have bonded for, as you know, many, many decades. So thank you very much for being here. It means a lot to us. I also want to welcome Carol Spahn, the Peace Corps Director. Today's event organizers deserve a special thanks. All our volunteers juggling work and families. Kim Murphy, Kathleen Corey as we all know her, Megan Celestine, Lynn Needler, Marianne Minatello, Christina Waka, sorry, Christina, and congratulations, Christina. Kate Raftery, Lee Lacey, and our terrific intern, Alondra Khalil. I also want to do a special thanks to Andrew Wilson, and Caitlin Comfort within the Office of the Third Goal, who have worked tirelessly on behalf of this event. And the Peace Corps management and logistics and IT team who turn on the lights, make sure that the room works, and importantly, that this microphone works. So we really appreciate all of the Peace Corps staff who make this day and this event terrific. I would like to now introduce the Peace Corps Director, Carol Spahn. As many of you know, Carol and I had a chance to work together for the 3 years that I was here, when she was Peace Corps Country Director in Malawi, and then was a senior Africa regional official when I was director. Carol you all know Carol, she's led the agency through these last 4 years of extraordinary rebuilding to recruit and support volunteers as they return in full force to 60 countries of service following the COVID pandemic. As we know, Carol began her service as a volunteer in Romania, very important time for Romania, and we continue to work together for her time in Malawi and here at the agency. I honor you. I honor your extraordinary leadership during a very complicated, exciting time, and your commitment to all that Peace Corps represents, past, present, and future. Carol, it's yours.
Wow. It is tremendously wonderful to see all of you here in person. So many familiar faces, new faces. As Jody mentioned, people young and old coming together in person, restoring that sense of human connection that we all value so much as part of Peace Corps. It really does mean a lot. To my old boss and good friend Jody Olson, thank you for that beautiful introduction. Thank you for trusting me when it was time to pass the torch. I'm learning how that feels at this very moment, and it's not easy for an agency that you love and care about as much as we all do, and it's the reason we all show up today and decades later. So thank you for that. Thank you for your leadership during the COVID-19 outbreak and prior, and all of the different iterations that you have served Peace Corps. I want to thank our panelists. Thank you for coming today and sharing your stories, your service journeys. Also want to give a very warm welcome to Mr. Molibeli and Mrs. Hanisi, who are joining from the Embassy of Liberia, and to the ambassador, or sorry, Lesotho, and the ambassador from Liberia. Sorry, I got my two L's mixed up, but thank you so much for being here. It means a lot. And it means a lot because Peace Corps at the end of the day is about community. It's about coming together in community with people from around the world, about celebrating difference, about coming together in the spirit of world peace and friendship. And that matters more now than ever. Jody, as you were talking about, when I entered my Peace Corps service, it was 4 years after the fall of communism. A very profound moment in history. We are just a few years out from the COVID-19 pandemic, which disrupted every country around the world. We've never seen anything like it, where borders were closing in the ways that they did, where communities and families were becoming isolated, where neighbors were being isolated from one another. And as Jody and I were reflecting on that and what it means now, so many things have fundamentally changed. We still get up and go to work most days, but attitudes about so many different things of how we live our life have foundationally changed. And I'm really filled with joy here today to see both how all of you have shown up, but to learn more about what Women in Peace Corps Legacy is doing around mentorship, around supporting the next generation, about raising the voices and the stories that will inspire us and that we can use to help inspire that next generation. As Jody mentioned, we are very, very proud that just 2 years into our return to service, we are back in 61 countries with volunteers on the ground. We have started new country programs in Vietnam, in Sri Lanka, in El Salvador. In Vietnam, it was the first Peace Corps program there ever. I think it was 17 years in the making. So many of you in this room were probably a part of that journey. I got to take all the credit. Thank you, when I got to swear in the volunteers. But I know that that was all the work of many, many people who came before me. And I think that's, again, the beauty of Peace Corps. All that we do builds on the work of the many, many people and relationships that have come before us. So while we are back in 61 countries, we are at around 3,400 volunteers today. That is, I think when we evacuated, there were around twice that many. When we began the return to service, we began intentionally small because it was still COVID, right? We were still in that moment of not knowing what would happen or how things might play out. We had very strict protocols in place for when volunteers went into country and how we protected the community when we came in and how we sequestered and how we isolated, and we did not want to be the ones bringing COVID into communities around the world. And we wanted our volunteers who were serving there to be safe. And gradually we've adapted, right? We started to loosen some of the restrictions. We started opening it up to, service to people with different medical histories, coming out of COVID. We had to be very, very careful about people who might have comorbidities and things of that nature. So it's been a very, very dynamic time. I'm very, very proud of where we are today. And I'm concerned. I am concerned because it is increasingly challenging to bring people into the Peace Corps, into countries that are maybe less well known, where there might be considered to be different risks. And as I talk with young people, let me just say people across the board, I think something happened to us during COVID where we turned inward, where we got comfortable behind a screen, where we got comfort in safety, and where we have conflated wellness with comfort. And we know that wellness means we have to grow, and we have to stretch, and we have to reach. And we all took that risk. We took that risk in very different circumstances. Maybe from a place where we had a broad safety net ourselves, maybe where we hadn't been through something that was quite as disruptive or traumatic as the pandemic. And so when I sit in front of you today and I think about the mentorship that you all are doing, my ask of you is to reach out individually, personally, to people who you think would make great Peace Corps volunteers. I saw that, Ellen. Jackie, you would make a great Peace Corps volunteer. Truly. And let them know what you see as their potential. Let them know what you see in them that will help give them the strength to take that leap beyond their comfort zone, to take that leap in a time where so much has been disrupted, where they might just need that extra lift. Because it has been a very, very difficult time. And we are seeing it. We are seeing it in recruiting for Peace Corps. AmeriCorps is seeing it in recruiting for AmeriCorps. Study abroad is seeing it in students who maybe don't want to go overseas or maybe only want to go to Europe. I am hearing it everywhere I go. So we need to let people know we've got their back. We're here from them and that they can do it. And I'm incredibly proud of this organization. I will be incredibly proud to join this organization shortly. And have just been cheering, all along as I see the great work that's been happening and the great people that you have been honoring in terms of their work post Peace Corps. So thank you all for what you're doing here. Thank you for caring enough to show up, for understanding that every action you take as an individual matters, and that it adds up to something much bigger than that individual action. And I think that is also something that is missing, because what I hear is a sense of despair. And progress requires hope. So it is up to us to inspire the next generation to bring that hope at a time when we might not be feeling incredibly hopeful ourselves. So we've all got to dig deep, push for those values that we all hold so dear. And I truly believe that Peace Corps will remain strong with all of the support of people like you who continue to show up for the organization and on behalf of the values and represent that in the world. Thank you so much.
Echo Carol's comments. She and I had been talking a little earlier this afternoon, and what Carol said right at the end is so important. I've been talking to college students in different parts of the country. And for example, at St. Olaf's in Minnesota, I asked the college students, what do you need? What do you want for your own longer term success? I was surprised when they said, one, we need heroes. We don't have heroes. Two, several of them said, we need mentors. We need individual mentors who pull out their hand and take our hand with them to activities. And we need people to tell their stories. It is their stories that give us encouragement for our stories and what we can do, because we feel very discouraged. And to bring people, to young people in particular, to joining Peace Corps, but to service and to volunteering, we have a real responsibility to be there and be present. So thank you, Carol, for saying that. It is so important right now. And I want to do an extra thank you to the ambassador from Liberia for being here. It's another terrific Peace Corps country. I have been to your country also. And I know many, many return Peace Corps volunteers who savor the joy of Liberia. So thank you very much. Women of Peace Corps' legacy mission is to advance women and girls' empowerment, to create a better, more just, equitable, inclusive, and safe world for future generations. And this is what we've been talking about. We work with and through women whose own Peace Corps volunteer or staff experience, whether recent or distant, support these commitments. Specifically, we share a newsletter among our 800 members to highlight our activities. We also describe an NGO supporting women and girls in our newsletter. Membership is free, and we encourage you to join by signing up on our website. That was the advertisement. We also select and honor 2 women leaders each year. The Deborah Harding Leadership Achievement Award, and I know that a few of you are here, but our 2024 Deborah Harding Award winner, Dr. Katrin Sarah Sadiq, is here. The international infectious disease expert is here with us this afternoon. Katrin, where are you? There you are. The Kate Raftery Emerging Leaders Award is given to a younger leader, and this year's winner is Lauren Spiegel, whose research focuses on maternal child health in giving birth. Now, she would have been here, Lauren would have been here, but today is her due date for her second child. So she had to stay in North Carolina. We also create and support a bi-monthly 30-minute podcast featuring women leaders who share how their own Peace Corps experiences have encouraged their current careers in service to others. Recent interviewees are Anita Friedman, Regina Abercrombie Winstanley, and former directors Carrie Hessler-Radlin and Carol Bellamy. Our 10 podcasts can be found on our website and on Spotify and Buzzsprout. Am I close? You can tell I don't listen, but I listen to the podcast. Since we began 18 months ago, we have had well over 1,000 unique downloads, representing about 28 countries. Pretty good? Okay. Our mentoring program brings together for 3 months each spring about 30 Peace Corps staff through We at Peace Corps and 30 mentors within the Women of Peace Corps Legacy membership. We share advice and suggestions as many of us look towards onward professional and educational opportunities. And right now, we encourage you, any of you who are interested, to sign up either as a mentee or a mentor, which you can do on the website. Our next mentoring program begins in March, and Carol is here all the way from Costa Rica to help sign you up. We also feature a couple of virtual programs each year, which are recorded and then accessed through the website. And an in-person program here at Peace Corps headquarters each year. Thank you, Third Goal. Andrew, where are you? And we have an in-person networking get-together in May at Wonder Garden, just a block away. I know many of you know where it is because they've got good beer. We have wonderful donors whose contributions have helped make this event possible. Thank you. We are also thrilled to have achieved our goal of fully endowing the Deborah Harding and the Kate Raftery Leadership Awards, which enable us to continue to recognize outstanding work of 2 women leaders each year. This year, as part of our fundraising, we're launching a new effort to support the Lorette Miller Ruby Gender Development Fund. And we want to thank Peace Corps' Gifts and Grants Management Department for helping, thank you, Laura, for helping make all this happen so that we can actually support with this. We can help support women and girls in projects around the world from Peace Corps volunteers through the Lorette Miller Rupee Fund. And I was an advocate for this because I worked for Lorette Miller Rupee for 8 years when she was Peace Corps director. And what a champion for all that we are and for women leaders, and truly a hero. I would now like to introduce Kathleen Corey. Corey, as we all know her. And by the way, Mr. Ambassador, she was a Peace Corps volunteer in Liberia.
Changed my life.
She, in addition to her volunteer service in Liberia, has been Peace Corps leadership staff in the EMA region. And she and I got to work together for a few years ago, and has been in leadership staff in 3 countries, but I didn't check out which ones they were. One was Moldova, wasn't it?
No, North Macedonia and Sri Lanka.
Okay, Sri Lanka and North Macedonia. Thank you. She's also been president of Women of Peace Corps Legacy and is one of the organizers and champion of the Women of Peace Corps Legacy podcast. Thank you, Corey, for your terrific service, and I'm now turning it to you.
See if this works. How's that? Can you hear me pretty good? Okay. Carol, thank you. Just super important words from you, inspirational. We all have a job to do to get so many more people back into the Peace Corps and being able to connect the dots of world peace. So really appreciate it. Jody, who's better to work for with than you? So thank you so much. Jody, she didn't mention it, but she was one of the founding mothers of Women of Peace Corps Legacy, was president, and then had to step down because she was the director here. So then I became the executive director of Women of Peace Corps Legacy for 4 years. And then when my time was over, Jody came back. And we are so happy that she and Megan Ree, Megan, where are you? I just need to, okay, and Megan are co-presidents now. I have a little announcement to make, which is all of these mics all around us are very, very sensitive. So if you want to have a side conversation, I've been told to ask you, step outside, grab a cookie, step outside, but we have to be careful about what we say because it'll get picked up. And you don't want that to happen. And I have to say, I am so delighted that you are here. My Peace Corps service in Liberia a long time ago absolutely changed my life. It set me on a trajectory of overseas work and helping because I had such a fabulous experience as a Peace Corps volunteer serving in Liberia 4 years. So I was up in Zorzor. I'm sure you know where that is. All right. So anyway, as Jody mentioned, we are so proud of our podcast. It was an idea that happened about 18 months ago. We just were sitting around talking about, man, all of these former Peace Corps volunteers have done such extraordinary things in their lives. They got their inspiration, they got their start from Peace Corps. And we said, how about let's do a podcast? Let's choose women who were Peace Corps volunteers, who are exceptionally good leaders today, and have them speak to us for a half an hour. And so we have done 9 to date, and we are very proud of how this thing has taken off. Because, as Jody mentioned, over 1,000, as of this morning, we have 1,300 people who have listened to our podcast. That is 100 more since last week. And we've gone now from 26 countries to 28 countries where people are listening in. So this thing has really sprouted legs. And that's why we're so happy to be able to be here with you all to talk more about it and get you excited about it and tell others about it as well, because it is very inspirational, back to the point of getting people to join the Peace Corps. All right, so enough on that. We put together, I hope you'll like it, a video which has, of our 9 interviewees, there is a quote from each of them that's very inspirational about what the Peace Corps or their leadership has meant to them. And we've put it together, and so let's run it now.
For me, is that the most important things in life are the relationships of trust we build with other human beings. And I think that's true in business, it's true in family, it's true in service, it's true in life. Through relationships, we are changed and we are able to influence. Through relationships, we solve problems. Through relationships of trust, if we're working together, and I'm underscore together, we can overcome anything.
People need to be involved in their own decision-making about their own futures. You know, there's a phrase we use here in human services, nothing about us without us. So if we're working with young people, then young people need to be involved. If we're solving issues related to aging, we have to consult with the aging. We cannot assume that we know what is best for people. We really have to be humble, be really good listeners, and work to bring up the voice of people with the lived experience.
I did learn as a younger woman that building a network of people that were either young women like myself breaking into their careers or who were in international development was very important for me. That support allowed me to be braver, to take more risks, and to feel more confident in my ability to advance my career.
You can make a change right where you are. And that is kind of why Peace Corps spoke to me, right? It was like, how do you start helping right now? So as a young, person right out of law school, I didn't want to wait, 12 years before I can make a difference. I wanted to do something right then that would change lives, some life, one life, anybody's life.
And so my leadership is really about bringing out the best in me and the best in others. And it's always toward a common goal that helps make the world a better place.
So I would have to say it was Peace Corps and Peace Corps leadership that really made me pursue the career I ended up pursuing.
One of the things that people need to recognize is that trafficking can happen anywhere. The other thing about human trafficking is I think frequently people think of human traffickers in the situation in the way that media portrays it, that it's some evil boogeyman who's obviously and very easily identified. But in reality, traffickers blend much more into society. It's much harder to identify. They don't walk around with a big sign saying, I'm an abuser or I exploit people.
If you want to make a difference in the world through your career, know what your strengths are, know what your passion is, and then find where you can bloom. And that's where you want to focus your energy.
We are the messenger of what Peace Corps is and can be. We pay it forward by joining. We gain so much from the experience. Then we pay it back by inspiring the next generations of volunteers.
Peace Corps is an incredible way to help us all be in a position that I think human beings can be. I don't care whether you're a liberal or conservative or tall or short or fat or thin. I mean, just having an appreciation of how we can benefit from differences rather than being fearful of differences. And to me, Peace Corps is one of the ways it allows that to occur, and it's fabulous.
to mention her name in a little bit. Hannah Leon Tung is the person who has helped us put this together. Every single one of our podcasts, Hannah was responsible for making it happen. And then to put this together was a challenge. I know I was helping on it. And I just want to thank you so much because we never could have a podcast without this. Okay, let me turn now to introducing all of our panelists that we are going to have some good in-depth discussion with. First, I'd like to introduce Latanya Mapp. You can see her. She is beaming in from New York, and we greatly appreciate that she was willing to join us. Excuse me, Latanya is president and CEO of the Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors, and she was a Peace Corps volunteer in Lesotho. Yes, yeah. Jaynice Del Rosario is a senior program officer for the Girls First Fund, and she was a volunteer in Ethiopia. Kate Raftery was Peace Corps director in 4 countries. I don't think, Jody, has there ever been anybody who's done 4 countries? All right, so this is Kate Raftery, and she also has been a senior advisor to many different groups at the Peace Corps who were leaders. And she was a volunteer in Paraguay. Dee Siegel is the Deputy Chief Sustainability Officer at the White House Council on Environmental Quality, and was a volunteer in Guatemala. And so you have much more of a description of their bios on the back of your program. We just wrote a little tiny bit about each one of them, so you knew a little bit more about them. All right, so I'd like to turn now to just a really generic question. So I'm going to start with you, Dee. I'm going to start with you. As mentioned, our podcast focuses on extraordinary women leaders, like all of you, kind of like you, who have made a significant difference in the world. So what we'd like to hear from each one of the 4 of you is, how has your Peace Corps experience influenced, impacted who you are today as a leader? And so let's start with you, Dee, and then we'll run straight down.
Well, thank you. I'm just delighted to be here today and meet so many people who love Peace Corps as much as I do and understand the impact. I think the first thing I would say is probably the obvious thing that anybody would say, so I'm glad I'm going first, is the importance of doing work that you value. When you want to be a leader, it really brings authenticity to your work and your life and what you want to do. It's very hard to lead on something that you don't believe in. And so being a Peace Corps volunteer, I was like all in, as many people are all in. And you feel this drive to really, really get the job done and do whatever it takes. And once you feel that, you realize how it drives you and that you want that again in your future. And so it kind of hooked me on this idea that I wanted to do things that matter. And then in thinking about this question, I thought a little bit about like how it's affected me as a leader today. And I don't mean to say this in that I was a good leader when I was 23 years old, but I think about the lessons that I learned when I was a volunteer and I've reflected on throughout my entire life of work and extracurricular activities that I've done. And there were 3 things that came to mind, which I think echoes some of what we heard in the opening video, which is one, the importance of listening to people. As a leader, just telling people what to do is not helpful. You really need to connect with the people that you're working with and listen to them. They have so much to offer. 2 was trust. Gaining the trust of those that you work with as a leader is so very important. And 3, the thing that I learned the most, and I think I carry with me today, is that being a leader is hard. But if you just work through it, you can do it and you'll get satisfaction on the other side. I mean, these are hard things, and the Peace Corps is the toughest job you'll ever love, and I learned that in that experience, and I carry that with me.
So that's what I was going to say. Everything you said was good, but so in addition, I would say that for me, one of the things that I learned pretty profoundly as a Peace Corps volunteer was that respect and trust as a leader is not a guarantee because you have a title. So you might be, no offense, director of Peace Corps, or the director of a country director. You have to earn that respect and you have to earn that trust, and it's renewable. It doesn't last forever. You have, through your actions, through your words, you've gained that. And when I was a volunteer, we would go out to visit communities, rural communities, and I might go with the Minister of Agriculture. I might go with someone from the local government or the mayor. And they would speak, and the audience was respectful. But when a decision was needed or an action was going to be taken, it was very quick. And I was lucky because my Spanish was so bad, I couldn't speak, so I had to watch. I had to look around the room, and it became clear that everybody was looking at one person and waiting to see what that person was going to say. And what I label that person now is the unusual suspect. You know, when I drove up, that was not the person I thought that was going to be the spokesperson for this whole organization. But clearly that person had demonstrated incredible respect and incredible trust in others, and they got it back in return. So I learned that as a leader, I will always need to earn the respect and trust that I gain, and it's renewable. It's not forever, and I have to keep working to make sure I keep it.
Thank you. So I am a senior program officer at the Girls First Fund, and basically what the fund does is that we fund community-based organizations in different parts of the world that are based in communities like the community that I served in Ethiopia. And so my Peace Corps service has been really instrumental in my ethos and how I do my work, because the way that we think about and support partners is really connected to what the context that they're actually in. So I understand from my own lived experience, like what it's like to not have access to clean water, or not have recreational spaces in your communities, or not have access to consistent power or internet. And so when I'm engaging with partners and they're not able to do something, or they're really struggling to get their funding because the banks are not giving them the wire receipt that they need, and the bank says that the money's not there, but the money is there, right? Like, I know because I used to stand on the line at the bank for hours. And so that context is really important to be able to actually work in a spirit of partnership with the partners that we fund. And we say that we are trust-based. We say that we really believe in the people from the communities having those answers to solve their own problems. And having been in the Peace Corps allows me to show up in alignment with the things that we say. And so I'm very, very grateful for that.
Latanya, we're excited to hear from you now.
Thank you. And let me just start by thanking Peace Corps for inviting me. And I'm sorry I'm not able to be in the room with you. I mean, everyone who knows me and who's read anything that I've written, Peace Corps has really been a really important part of my life. And I try to get every young person, including my own children, to go to Peace Corps. So it's important for me to be here with all of you. And to my colleagues from Lesotho, Dumelang, Ndati, Ma, it is so good to see you. And I have to say that so much of how I lead is shaped by what I'll call the everyday feminists that I met when I was in Lesotho. And since I've been to Lesotho, and women who I deeply admire and am strengthened by every day, the greatest gift those women taught me is to be the kind of leader who listens. And along with my other colleagues on the panel, I think it's the same thing that you're hearing. I mean, after all, when you land in Lesotho at 25 for 2 years, far from your family, your friends, and a very different culture, and when you're working with funders and partners on let's say a niche issue like herd boys, it's completely new to you. And listening is how you make meaning of everything that you're hearing. It is a lens of curiosity and care. And so to be honest, I think that the ability to listen and to ask good questions often gets overlooked in leadership. And my suspicion is that it's because maybe listening isn't on the list of, the more masculine coded leadership traits that people celebrate, like being assertive or dominant or decisive. But we do need to challenge that, because right now, more than ever, I think listening represents a different kind of leadership. And it's grounded in a we, and not necessarily an I. It's an acknowledgement that you don't know or have all the answers. And as my colleagues were saying, it brings the people and communities that are closest to the problems or the issues that you're trying to solve to the decision-making rooms, where their voices and their perspectives can help build solutions that actually work for them and, in essence, all of us. So I think, when I think back on the so many things I learned during my Peace Corps tour, I do think that listening, being in a space where you have a different language, when you're seeing different things happening that you don't understand, I really have taken that with me throughout and listened to all of the cohorts and the constituents that I've worked with since. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all four of you. So I have another question about leadership for you, which good, solid, inspirational leadership means that you deal with challenging situations successfully. So I'd like to ask each one of you, what is a challenging situation that you've been in your leadership role, and how did you deal with it? Go straight down.
So I think this is an example that's very current at the moment, which is that I have led a team now twice through an administration change. When there's a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty about what's going to happen to the work, what's going to happen to things they've achieved, what's going to happen to them personally. It's a lot of change for individuals. And I even think back to the example this happened when I was on the other side, when I was working at Peace Corps. It's been somewhere in the 2000s. And I had a great example in Marianne Benutella, who was my boss at the time here at Peace Corps, if you remember. And what I think really helps is, one, it's thinking about impact and what we can do, and yes, focusing on the work that matters, but it's really dealing with the team and individuals as people, and acknowledging that as people, they are there with their own concerns, their own fears, their own path forward, and really addressing them that way, and spending time one-on-one, showing them that you care. Showing that you care about them and their future and what they're concerned about, and being there for the people on your team and your colleagues, being a leader amongst peers, I think has been the most impactful thing in the past, and something that I'm doing right now with the team that I work with today.
Also, I was gonna say that. But, okay, being in the middle is not working for me here. Oh, all right, good. Actually, mine is very, very different. And it's pretty Peace Corps specific, and many of you will relate to it, not because you were in this situation, but you probably knew somebody was. And that is how I led an administrative separation of a Peace Corps volunteer. And for those of you who were not volunteers, that is when you have determined, because of a policy infringement or something, that a Peace Corps volunteer has to end their service. And what it means is that you are ending a dream that somebody has potentially had for all of their life. And you're saying, sorry, you're going to have to go home now. And I think at the end, it's hard to say, well, that went well. I was very successful in the execution of that. But I will say that I was, insofar as I would ask every volunteer, not that there were that many, but I would ask the volunteer to critique me at the end. And I think if I learned something, I learned there were certain components that had to exist. There had to be complete transparency about what was happening. There had to be clarity in communication, not only to that volunteer, because it was very clear to me that I was also communicating with the entire Peace Corps volunteer community. And the volunteer that was impacted, because of privacy and confidentiality, it was their story. It was their story to say what had happened as they talked to the volunteers. So I think what I learned in terms of leadership was that your leadership, it's like, I thought it was like the debate, but anyway, so what I would say is that the volunteer, let me backtrack here. That leadership can be very personal. leadership can be shown in such a way that if you do it well, if you do it well, you can, as an old Irish saying, you can tell somebody to go to hell and they'll thank you for the directions.
A challenge. There have been many challenges, but the one that comes to mind. I was elected national coordinator of the Gender and Development Committee when I was in the Peace Corps in Ethiopia. And there were 8 of us on the team, and I was the lead. And I noticed that some of the young men on the team had a bit of a hard time having me as their leader. I think that even though they believed and said they believed in gender equality, it was different for them to sort of like put that in practice. And at the time, the way that I dealt with it was just kind of like ignoring it and just being like, okay, whoever's not supportive of me leading this team and doing this work, I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on the people that are supporting me, and they're just going to have to figure it out. But as I've, gone through my career, I've learned to sort of like bring people in and engage people and communicate with them in a way that lands for them. I used to be very direct in my communications and kind of just say things very clearly. I'm from the Dominican Republic, and that's culturally how we are. We are very direct, we are very clear. However, I've learned through experience that people can be brought in, perspectives can change. And if you're interested and really committed to bringing people in, you can do that over time and with effort. And so that's something that I've learned over the years.
All right, Tanya, we look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, I don't know. This is like the last one kind of gets tricky here. So listen, most of my career, I've been focused on movement building. And so inherently, there's just been so many challenges. And ironically, much of the challenges I've experienced within this space aren't just about holding external systems and institutions accountable. It's sometimes about how we hold ourselves accountable. And so I've learned that being like a good leader means that being a good partner to those that you're fighting a good fight with is incredibly important. And so just a quick story in that vein, in 2014, I was serving as the executive director of Planned Parenthood Global. I had just left the Foreign Service where I served with USAID. And it was a time when like mainstream organizations were beginning to move from like a pro-choice narrative to a more holistic and intersectional kind of reproductive justice framework. And the problem was that Planned Parenthood and many other mainstream groups had not credited like the longstanding work of reproductive justice organizers, the researchers, the activists who had really developed the movement, and many of whom were mostly Black, Indigenous, and other women of color. And so several organizations penned and signed an open letter that was like directed to Planned Parenthood, calling attention to this very injustice. And they were absolutely right to do so. And it resonated, I resonated with their message quite deeply in the seat that I was in. And I thought about every time in my career, right, before that, as my colleague was just saying, where you suggest an idea that was ignored until, like a white male colleague repeated it and received all the credit. And so, yes, Planned Parenthood responded swiftly. And yes, we had many hard, overdue, and necessary conversations within our executive leadership team about the organization's past, its present, and its future. But it was an important reminder that, being a good leader in the movement space that we care about means that we must be good partners. And some of us, even in this room, I'm sure, sit within well-established and well-funded organizations who have had the luxury of taking up a lot of room. And I invite all of us in our leadership to leverage that privilege and power to not only uplift our own work, but to cultivate equitable partnerships with organizations that have long been powering movements at the grassroots level. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you so much, Latanya. Thank you, all of you. It's just as inspirational as what we had all hoped. Okay, I am now going to turn to some specific questions for each of the 4 of you. that have to do with things that you are known for, that we know you are good at. And so I'm going to start with you, Kate. Here we go. All right. What have you learned about leadership with working with top leaders of government at the White House?
Thank you. And I've learned a lot. I really admire so many people I work with. It's a great opportunity to see up close just some of the smartest, most hardworking people doing really important stuff, tough questions with big implications. So I spend a lot of time watching and observing and listening, also because I'm not usually the most important person in the room, and that's what you do when you're not the most important person in the room. But the things that I've observed that I take to heart and I carry with me is one, how important relationships are. These are things that these are not going to be new because we've heard them all from all the great leaders at the beginning, but how important relationships are. You're going to work with the same people again and again, probably in your career, and building those trusting, honest relationships, being an honest broker, being transparent with people. These things are really important as you build those relationships that help you get work done later and gain respect. And of course, that ever most important, trust. When you have trust, you don't always have to explain and give all the details. And when you get to this really high level, people don't have time for all the details. They want to trust that you did the work and you're coming to them, and you've done that by demonstrating that through your whole career. And those are really important things. Another thing I would say is learn how to work with people you don't agree with. You think in my environment at the White House, everyone's on the same page. And yes, everyone's trying to work towards the same thing, but they have different interests. They have competing interests. They may have different ways of getting there. And so you're not going to agree. So again, being able to have those disagreements and then come to a conclusion and move on is super important. And the last thing I would say is it's important to just learn to roll with it and keep calm. That's a really, really great quality and something that I respect so much in people that are dealing with disappointment and change and fire drills and things all day, is the more that you can focus on what matters and just stay steady, which I think I've also learned in Peace Corps is a really, really, really good quality that I just really admire, and try to take a deep breath sometimes at work when things aren't going the way I want and just say what really matters here.
All right, Kate. Kate, as we all know about you, mentoring has been a significant part of your career and your focus. You often speak of the importance and power of intergenerational communication and engagement, especially among women. So what we'd like to hear from you is, can you talk a little bit more about this concept and why you have found it so important?
Yes, I can do that. I started to look at, where I am in my life, and, there's this phenomena of the invisible older woman syndrome, where I'm struggling to stay relevant in today's world. I can continue to have a voice and be taken seriously. And then you have the imposter syndrome, young women who are not taken seriously because they're not old enough to have enough life experiences or skills. And then Jaynice and I were talking about, and then there's this other group of women who have children, or they're taking care of their parents. And so obviously you have too many responsibilities outside of work to give you much more response. So it's when do we fit in? When are we taken seriously? And how do we stay relevant? And I think one of the things for me working with, and some people say I'm generally the mentor. I've been the mentee for the last few years. I see it's a number of my mentors around the room, younger women, younger professionals who have helped me to stay relevant. They've helped me be a cheerleader for myself and for them, and a validator for myself and for them. There's a sharing of energy. There's a sharing of understanding about what the cultural and societal shifts are, so that I'm not saying something that, somebody said that, in 1950, and I'm still using the same word. They help me to bring my vocabulary a little bit into the real world. And so I think what happens is that we all need that cheerleader. We all need that validator. And as someone who has had a few life experiences and made tons of mistakes, at least I can put that out there for a younger professional to look at, to pick and choose from, and hopefully kind of weave into their journey as they are crafting it and molding it as they go forward. And I've learned a lot from Jaynice, so I will pass it on to her.
But one second, Kate, I have to say this. Kate mentoring and caring about developing young people is precisely why we came up with the name, the Kate Raftery Emerging Leader Award, which is a big. Right next to her is one of the award winners. And so Jaynice, and kind of to the whole question about being a younger person who's beginning their development of their leadership. So what I want to say to you is you dedicated your entire career to implementing programs that improve the life of women and girls all around the world. As a professional who's moved into more positions with more influence and more impact, all right, tell us what are the challenges for a younger female professional and how do you deal with it and how do you establish yourself as a serious professional?
It's a really great question. McKinsey and Lean In came out with a report this year. It's called Women in the Workforce. And the data from that report showed that women in their 20s and 30s feel significant ageism and experience significant ageism in the workplace. There's this sense, piggybacking off of what Kate shared, that they don't have enough experience and also that they need to sort of like earn their stripes, right? You need to kind of like put in the work. It's also very difficult when you appear younger than you actually are. I was actually speaking with a friend earlier, and that's been my experience. I appear younger than I am. She appears younger. And so that's an added layer. So even if you are in your early 40s, if you appear that you are in your late 20s or your early 30s, that still kind of works against you. It's been a challenge for me. It's something that I think we need to change. Some of the ways that I work to change that is by myself working with young people at the Girls First Fund. I lead the Change Makers program, which is a global grant making program. And I've brought in girls from the different countries that we fund in to help us co-create these grants that we're giving out and have really listened. We sat with them and we really listened to what's important to them, what kinds of organizations really serve girls. And by working with them and bringing them to conferences and supporting their development, we are trying to change this narrative that, you know, girls and young women are not capable of doing important and great work. I also started a pilot program called the Feminist Idea Lab. And so I give out seed grants to girls and young women who are interested, who have an idea that they really want to bring to life. And I work closely with them. And the thing that I hear most often is that they're really grateful that someone believes in them and that there's someone that has taken the time to pay attention to them and believe in them and help them develop the idea or the program that they want to bring to life. And so my ask of all of us is that we start to engage and trust young women and young people. And when people are excited and hungry and enthusiastic, they can do really, really amazing things. And you don't need to, you know, we all deserve opportunity and we all learn from each other. And so I think that's something that we can all begin to change little by little as we engage with young people.
Wonderful. All right. So Latanya, I've got the last question for you that's specific. You have held many impressive leadership roles throughout your whole career. And these positions have required leadership which could reach, inspire diverse individuals, communities, and partners. So what do you believe has allowed your leadership to so successfully bridge the divides? And is there any advice that you might have for all of us who are struggling to build those bridges in both our workplace and in our communities?
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, first of all, it's kind of you to say, I feel like I'm still working on this, right? I'm certainly thinking about it every single day. And especially in this political moment, not just in our country, but in many other countries. I've met so many different people over the years. I mean, right after Peace Corps, I lived and worked with UNICEF and with USAID in 15 countries around the world, and I loved every minute of it. I mean, it allowed me to learn from others' beliefs, their lived experiences, and the ways of existing in the world. But it was also the most challenging part of my job too, right? And so when I enter a space where there's definitely a divide, whether I'm negotiating a bilateral agreement, a national education, health, environment program, and whether it's just me and one other person or it's a larger party, a larger group, I'm trying to facilitate a connection. That has to be the goal. I learned to practice two core principles that I hope can be helpful. So, I mean, first, back to where I started, listen from a place of curiosity, not a place of judgment. And instead of assuming what someone else's intentions or beliefs are, just ask the clear question. And that has always helped. And then the second one was, I think, anchoring yourself in these common values that people hold. I mean, pointing to the North Stars that we all share. Whether it be something as simple as like respect for humanity or building world peace. The goal isn't really to agree on everything, but the goal is to have a productive conversation that can lead to meaningful action towards really the movement that you believe in. And sometimes these actions are just baby steps, so simply just sowing the seeds for a relationship or a connection or a stronger understanding of each other is, to me, the real value and successful outcome that you get with the work that we get to do every day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have one last question for you four. Very basically, each of us often thinks, I wish I had known what I know now. All right, so could you please tell us what you would like to tell a younger self or any one of us with your thoughts on this? All right.
I had two answers to this question. I'm going to pick this answer. I'm going to echo something that Carol was talking about, which is take risks. People ask how I got my job that I have today, which seems like a cool job, and it is. And it's literally because I walked up and I said to someone, I was in the federal government, I said, hey, I would like to come work in your office. How can I do that? And they figured it out. And then I got offered a job and I was like, I don't know if this is the right thing to do. This isn't perfect, but I'm going to do it. And I did it. And I ended up here. The job's best job I ever had. I love it. And I think about times in my life but I will say, I'm not a big risk taker at all. I'm like, totally not. But when I think about the things that really made a difference, and I'm grateful I did and made the biggest difference in my life and my career, it was when I took the leap instead of being scared. And when I think of evidence, when I think of the things that I regret, I'm like, wow, I wish I'd given that a shot, because who knows what could have happened. And so I think it is about taking the risks. Most things are reversible. If it doesn't work out, you can just pivot and do something else. You can change, you can leave the job, you can move, but be brave and go do something new and exciting and see how it works out and see where it takes you.
Thank you. One thing I was just thinking when Jaynice was saying she sometimes looks much younger than she actually is. And I'm wondering, why do I look older than I'm actually? I think for the younger me, I think what I would say is be as curious as you can always be. Be curious about life, the people you're interacting with, and what's possible for your future. Build that sense of independence, self-reliance, confidence, but at the same time, be very intentional in the building of your own tribe. The group of women, in my case, you can throw some men in it, but this group of women who will be there for you. They'll be your safety net. They will be your reality checkers, and they will be there to help you make hard decisions and oftentimes the shoulder to cry on. And I would also say, if you need help, if you need assistance, ask for it. And many times we don't do that because we believe that it is an indication of weakness. And I would say that asking for help at critical moments is an indication of strength. And it's also an indication of great self-awareness, that you need it, you can use it, and you're turning to this crowd that stands ready to help you.
Such great advice. For me, I wish I knew when I was younger that it's possible for leaders to change their minds. I wanted to do a 3rd year in the Peace Corps, and I got myself a mentor at UN Women, and I tried, but you know, they were like, it's not Posh Corps, it's Peace Corps, and the UN was like seen as too posh at the time. And I kind of took that no and then just I was not happy about it, but I just moved on. And I realize now that I'm older and that I've gotten other no's that people can change their minds. Like you can sort of come to the table again and come with a different strategy and how could this be a win for me and for you? And that's something that I've learned, and that it makes me sad because there were things that I was like, oh, I should have tried a different way, or spoken to another person who could speak to that person who could help me get what I want. And so if you're really committed to making something happen, if you really care about something, find a way. Maybe the no just means like not right now, right? Maybe in another year, maybe in 2 years, but things are possible. People change their minds, people's perspectives change. And you don't have to just, just take the no and walk. You can change, you can help change that.
Latanya.
Yeah, this is all so inspiring. I tell my earlier self all of that, and then I tell her to care for herself. And because I think, let me just say, care for yourself the way you care for others. And to remember that like being an everyday feminist also means to steward your everyday well-being. I think the more that you learn how to give back to yourself, the more you can give back to others. And that certainly applies whether it's the family or the profession and the movements that you believe in. And that I would say to her that even in some of the bleakest moments, find the courage to care for yourself. Because I think it's in those moments where it's hard to tell people you need to check out for a minute and you need to take a moment. And that I would say to her that you're going to be an important member of communities and networks of support that really need you, and that you'll be less impactful if you can't show up in your full, beautiful self. And also that your family and friends will really appreciate it if you care for yourself.
All right. Amen. All right. We're about to close. I wanted to have a lot of Q&A, but it is about time that we're going to get kicked out of here. So I just a couple shout outs I have to give. I've already said Anna Lito, so much we couldn't do it without you. And Marianne Munatillo, Lee Lacey, she's virtual. The three of us have worked on this, and it's become successful because this team of 4 works really, really well together. And then I just want to thank so much our 4 panelists, because you guys gave us exactly the inspirational speeches and thoughts that we were hoping for. So thank you so much. One last person is Caitlin Comfort. Caitlin, we needed you. Every little thing that went right here was thanks to Caitlin. So we appreciate you a lot. Of asking you all to join us for a no-host event organized by we at Peace Corps, Women's Empowerment at Peace Corps, across the street. I think you mentioned it before, Jody, over at Wonder Garden. Look for the balloons. We have a whole section of Wonder Garden, and we want to keep talking to you and learn more from each other. Thank you, everybody. Join Women of Peace Corps Legacy and be part of our mission. Thank you.